stuck maybe 20 bucks on an old watch. Mr. Madden, did you even take a swing?
Could have taken her, Dad.
Hey.
Heard you had some excitement last night. I wish they'd have picked my place, you know?
Why didn't you take him out?
I was just trying to keep the damage to a minimum.
Yeah, how's that working out for you?
You okay? 'Cause you don't look okay.
There's a long dormant piece of me. Felt so very badly, wants out.
It's been a hell of a night.
What is the week?
Welcome to Funky Flicks Film Reviews, and today's review is Nobody. Bob Odenkirk, who's an actor, is amazingly good at playing the everyman. If you've ever seen Better Call Saul, this guy is a past master at playing the guy who's, you know, the ordinary guy who's in extraordinary circumstances, but is still the ordinary guy. And he stars in this latest underestimated man with a past genre of subgenre of action films. Let me tell you, this man with a past, he's having a blast.
You look like shit.
We first meet Odenkirk's Hutch. Over the course of a 2-week montage at the start of the film, where you can see that this guy's, you know, the mundanity of this guy's suburban lifestyle is grinding him to the ground. How he's, you know, his crap job, how he's treated at work, how he's treated by his family, is, you know, just cutting him up. And one night, his home is broken into by a pair of robbers, and he actually gets a chance to get the drop on him with a golf club, but stops short because, as he says later, he says he was trying to keep the damage to a minimum. And in the course of this, the robbers, they get away with a couple of dollars, and his son's attempts at heroics get him a black eye, and it all looks bad on Hutch. And every would-be cowboy in his life begins to treat him like an immense failure. But then later, in a clandestine conversation over a radio, with a disembodied voice from his past, a disembodied voice of reason from his past, played by RZA, we get the impression that there's more to Hutch than just the verbal punching bag he's allowed himself to become. Later that night, when he discovers that it is possible that the robbers who had come to his house had taken his daughter's kitty cat bracelet, given that this was written by Derek Kolstad, the writer of the John Wick films, this is reason enough for Hutch to launch himself into a quest and a search for a, you know, violent release that he's clearly been needing for some time. Now, his quest doesn't go quite as planned due to, you know, various complications and the fact that he has a pesky moral conscience. He does encounter some, you know, boisterous Russian gangsters who start pressing their will upon a young woman on a bus, and this leads to a fight on said bus, which is both crunchy in its edge and hilarious.
To do it or die, I've gotta be me. I can't be right.
This girl's gonna get home safe tonight.
Right for me.
I hope these apples like hospital food.
I've gotta be me. Daring to try to do it or die. I've gotta be me.
A girl alone on a bus at night? It's stupid. It's stupid, right?
Guys.
What are you still doing here, old man?
I'm gonna fuck you up.
From this point on, we discovered that From this point on, we discover that Hutch's actions have inadvertently re-announced him to the shadowy, three-letter government agency world he'd left behind before, some years ago. And through this, we realize that the Russians he'd encountered are connected to some obligatory movie karaoke singing crazed Russian gangster Don, whose petty, vengeful anger fuels the rest of the movie. This is director Ilya Naishuler's first feature film, since 2015's Hardcore Henry. You know, the first-person POV GoPro film about, well, God knows what it was about, but it was a really impressive comedic, live-action computer game type experience. And that is, quite an achievement to bring the computer game into what feels like live action. And it was based, again, on the technique was taken from a music video he'd made before. So the guy has some real comedy chops and action chops. And he goes over similar comedic ground in this subgenre. And speaking of subgenre, speaking of the underestimated man with a past subgenre, you could be forgiven for thinking that if you've seen The Equalizer, John Wick, History of Violence, or Retired and Extremely Dangerous, that you've already seen this film. And yes, when I was watching the film, I was ticking off each and every one of those boxes. But what comes across as a whole is the fact that through the comedic elements, this is more of a parody of the underestimated man with a past subgenre, like the airplane of that genre. There are some really hilarious scenes in the film. The film is riddled with really hilarious moments. But I think my favourite were these scenes where he's just done battle with some fellas and, they're bleeding to death. And he just sits down and starts giving these faux somber expositional backstories about how he was once an auditor and he was a badass and so on and so forth, and how he came to be where he is. And each one of these stories gets interrupted about halfway when the fella he's done battle with is finally bled out and he has to go find another goon to tell the rest of the story to. Oddly enough, although the film has a more comedic tone than the other films of its type, the action scenes are actually a little edgier and more, crunchy and plausible. He doesn't get it all his own way. He gets the crap kicked out of him while he's battling away. And Bob Odenkirk got into fighting fit form for this film. And I'm not talking Jim Bunny fit. He looks like a middle-aged man who's stayed in actual, strength, speed shape. Fighting fit, movie foo fit, well choreographed fight sequences, and made sure that he was fit enough to not be injured, that the fight sequences came across well, that he would look plausible. And that dedication does show on screen. Now, when you cast, comedy drama actor Bob Odenkirk for your action movie central character, having his hard as nails, tough as nails former FBI agent father being played by Christopher Lloyd, that really seems like the only choice. And the aforementioned voice on the radio, RZA, turns up toward the end with his own sort of fun action sequence for the big, action moment. And he brings a kind of Shane Black quality to it in terms of banter and quips and one-liners. Connie Nielsen plays Hutch's wife. Now, this is a bit of a thankless task, because her job is largely just rolling her eyes at his various states, be it the schlub he's become at the start of the story or the very, very, very violent midlife crisis he's having for the rest of the narrative. But there's something Connie Nielsen does subtly to bring the plausible reveals of who he really is in his life and give them a sense of, she anchors it in a sense of plausibility. I've heard and read and seen some critique of Alexei Serebryakov's Russian gangster character. Not in his performance at all, but in the thin characterization he's been given in the script. And to a point, I would agree. However, to be honest, he's not really playing the serious Russian gangster character that you would get in some of these other ones. He's Wile E. Coyote with a gun. He's Elmer Fudd with a gang at a karaoke club. In fact, on my way home from the cinema, for all of the John Wick Equalizer history of retarded and extremely dangerous violence references, the franchise that popped into my head that the film reminded me of as I was on my way home, it was like Tom and Jerry.
Froggy went a-courting, he did ride a sword and a pick and a revolver by his side. Cambo killed flop-doodle yellow bug, too lot of. That's the hard part right in there, and nephew.
The music choices round off the pulpy, cartoonish narrative quite brilliantly. Like, there are quite a lot of songs in the film that you will have heard used in, advertisements for travel agents or holidays or cars or whatever. And there are some new numbers that, I hadn't heard before, like, for example, some jaunty Russian karaoke songs that are used to hilarious effect. But these are mostly, songs you've heard before, but then repurposed by Neischuler and whoever his music supervisor was. And, well-worn tracks reused well. Now, there were two exceptions to this. In terms of Nina Simone's Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood, as far as I'm concerned, is kind of hardwired into Luther. So I'm hearing that song and I'm thinking, I'm already taken out of the film a little bit. I'm thinking of Luther and, Louis Armstrong's What a Wonderful World. Again, I'm supposed to be in the moment, and all I'm thinking of now is the end of Good Morning Vietnam. Now, that was irritating, but for the most part, a lot of the songs that you've heard before, like I've Got to Be Free and whatever it's called, and there's another one from that they used in a Honda advert that's from a musical about Don Quixote that's used like really cleverly in the film. They're old numbers that you've heard in other things that's been repurposed for comedy effect and generally works really well. Nobody is still on in some cinemas, I think, because a lot of films have these 45-day windows. But you can catch it on digital and you can get it on DVD, Blu-ray. If you can catch it at the Flicks, watch it at the Flicks because it's worth it. And whatever flick you end up watching and wherever you end up watching it, I hope it's worth talking about.
From scratch, like I used to.
I used to work for some very dangerous people. They came after my family.
They stole my kitty cat bracelet.
And you don't do that. Give me the kitty cat bracelet! It's been a hell of of a day.
Lasagna.
Nobody. In theaters only April 2nd. Rated R.